when a young woman is driving home one night and she sees a police officer behind her, she has no idea that this police officer isn't from around here. And then we take a look at the story of a young woman vacationing in the Alps. She's there with her family. She's there to enjoy the scenery. She's there to breathe in the crisp Switzerland air. Instead, she finds herself face to face with a frightening phantom. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio.
I'm all freaked out. Actually, I'm a lot freaked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Garbiner. I'm having a great day. Hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are ready for this heat wave. It's really gonna hit here up in Hood River this weekend. It's gonna be 104, which might be record setting. Now listen, man, I'm from Sacramento, dude. I'm totally fine with it, right? I'm all gonna go and wear a parka, walk around and call everyone a wussy, and then die of heat exhaustion. I'm used to hot weather. I have an air conditioner as well, so I'll be fine. A lot of the houses up here, man. I'll just put it this way. The library is going to be very, very crowded this weekend. A lot of people are going to be heading down there or to the pool. But someone who never goes swimming, someone who hates the water like a man with rabies, everyone get on your feet and give it up for Blitz Neo. Woohoo, yeah, wee, haha, yeah, he's all walking on in, dry as a bone. Blitz Neo made a donation during our 6th anniversary live stream special. And we gave a shout out to Blitz yesterday's episode, but we didn't get to the Carpenter Copter story. So we're having you back so you can fly the Carpenter Copter. I like to make sure everyone gets to do that. If you guys can't support the show financially, though, I really understand. I really, really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. I don't like throwing other people under the bus, but I will say this. I was researching a story the other day, and I found a link to a podcast. I was like, oh, I'll check out this podcast, get some info. It was behind a paywall. It's like, if you want to listen to this episode, you got to pay for it. And I just don't like that. I mean, I get it. You got to make your money, right? Don't hate the player, hate the game. And I don't hate them. But when we're talking about this paranormal research, I really want it to be as out there as possible. I really want it to be accessible. And that's why we're going on 6 years. We don't have a paywall. And a big part of that is Patreon, people who do support the Patreon. But if you guys can't, I really do get it. There's a lot of media that I watch that's free, whether it's YouTube channels like Ohmwrecker or Danny Gonzalez. I don't financially support them. Other podcasts I listen to, I don't financially support them. I get it. I do. I don't want you to ever think that I just say that because it rhymes, right? It is a pretty good rhyme, and it does help when you get the word out about the show. Really, really appreciate it. Blitz, Neo, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to toss you the keys to the Jason Jalopy. Everyone climb on board as Blitz drives us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command all the way out to Indiana. Nice leisurely drive across the country. We're headed out to Indiana. I wonder how hot it's going to be there this weekend. Headed all the way out to Indiana. We're about to meet a young woman. Let's go ahead and call her Anna. We don't have an exact time when this story took place. Fairly recent, within the past couple of years, I believe. Anna is a student at Indiana University. It's the weekend. It's time for her to head home. Drive on home and, go. You get to go home. You get to eat food for free. Your parents are like, oh, Anna, how was your day? All that stuff. You get to do all your fun college stuff during the week. But if you want some free food, there's always home. She's headed back home. You guys, if you're familiar with Indiana, if you guys live there, I know we got some listeners in Indiana. You might be able to figure out where this story took place. Apparently, 3 minutes outside of Bloomington. Jason, wow, that's out there. You're going to give us a street name. 3 minutes. What's part of the city? I don't know. What road was she on? I'm not for sure. But anyways, 3 minute drive outside of the city of Bloomington. Maybe you can figure this out, guys. She's driving home. It's 10 p.m. She's on this rural stretch of a 2-lane highway. And she's driving down this road, and all of a sudden, whoop, whoop, whoop! ICP didn't show up. The Insane Clown Posse is not in effect in the story. She sees flashing lights, police lights. shine behind her. She doesn't hear the siren, but she does see the lights, and she's like, oh, great, was I speeding? What was I doing wrong? Is my license plate not on the right way? Do I have a busted tail light? Do they know that I'm transporting 2 kilos of coke? Why am I getting pulled over? But she does what you gotta do, right? You gotta pull over. And she said there's this country road off of this 2-lane highway, so she keeps driving for a bit, and then she pulls off on this country road and stops her car. And the police car pulls in behind her and is sitting there for a moment, and then she just sees the red and blue flashing strobe lights of the police cruiser. And Anna goes, okay, might as well get a head start on this whole thing. She reaches over. I don't recommend this, by the way. If you're in the dark and you get pulled over by the cops, don't do this. She reaches over and she opens up her glove compartment to pull out her registration and insurance paperwork and all that stuff. It's probably not good. Don't do that until the cop asks you, because for all they know, you're pulling out a pistol. Well, Anna is reaching over and she's opening up the glove box to get this stuff out when she sees the lights disappear. They just shut off. The police lights shut off. She's like, oh, well, I mean, it makes sense, right? I've been pulled over. It doesn't need to keep running the lights. However, it generally is protocol, at least for a while, for the police car to leave their lights on so, people see that there's something going on over there, that someone's not speeding down the road and hits 2 parked cars. It's unusual for them to shut off the lights right after the stop, but, it's not impossible. And she's sitting there now in the dark, her own headlights illuminating in front of her car, but there's no longer police lights flashing behind her. Anna's just waiting there for the cop to walk up. The familiar crunch of boots on gravel. We've all heard this sound 100 times. Sound of boots on gravel as the officer's walking up to the driver's side. If you're ever in a car and you get pulled, this also becomes Jason's been pulled over a lot of times, has experience with this stuff. If you're ever sitting in your car and it's just you, and the police officer walks to the passenger side of the car to talk to you, they assume, or they might know, I mean, you might be a hardened criminal, but when they come up to the passenger side instead of the driver's side to talk to you, that's an offensive, not like it hurts your feelings, but there's defensive and offensive. That's an offensive tactic, because now they've created distance between you two. If you ever get pulled over and you see them walk over on the passenger side of the road, maybe they think the road's too busy for them to walk on that side, but a lot of times it's for them to give them distance and for them to see the interior of your car better, because they're standing 3 feet away as opposed to 1 foot away. So when the police officer comes to the passenger side of the door and you're the only occupant, that generally means that they either believe you have a weapon in the car or they believe that you're going to cause some trouble. Sometimes it's a safety thing. Right? That'd be so funny. You're listening to this episode and there's a cop standing next to the passenger side of your window. You got pulled over while you're listening to this. That cop's like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. We do this so we don't get hit by cars flying by. I'm just telling you, man. Just telling you. So she's sitting there and she's waiting for the police officer to walk up and tell her why she got pulled over and check her documents and all that stuff. Anna's sitting there waiting for the cop to walk up and tell her, can I see your documents? This is why you got pulled over. Do you know you were speeding? Do you know your stoplight's out? All that stuff. They ask you those tricky questions, right? I was about to tell another police story. I was like, okay, no, I'm done. Maybe one day we'll do a whole true crime episode about my experiences with the police getting pulled over. I got some crazy stories. But this is not the time or the place for them. We're in Indiana, and Anna's waiting for the cop to walk up, and nobody walks up. And she's waiting and waiting, and she looks back, and the lights are no longer there like she had known. In fact, she doesn't even see a car behind her. She's thinking, what? I mean, I guess maybe they got another call that was more important than whatever they pulled me over for, but I didn't hear a car pull out. I didn't see a car drive away from me. There's no one behind me. And I don't know where they are. I'm just sitting now in the dark in my car out on this rural road when all of a sudden her headlights start flickering and her car radio starts to glitch out. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Rockin' Like a... It's going all over the dial. Her lights are flickering. And the volume's going up and down. Right? This would be super disconcerting. And she says, when Anna wrote this, she goes, listen, I know this sounds like something out of a movie, but this is what happened. I'm telling you exactly what happened. All the electronics in my car started freaking out, and I figure, must have a short in my battery. There must be something going on here. So she gets out of her car, she pops the hood to take a look at the battery. The next thing that Anna knows, Anna is lying on her back. She's flat on her back, and she's looking up at the clear night sky. Anna's laying on her back, and she sees the stars, and she's never seen the stars this bright before. Sparkling, truly sparkling in the heavens. Anna sits up, and she doesn't know where she's at. The last thing she remembers is popping the hood of her car. And now she is sitting in the middle of a recently harvested cornfield. And there's a bit of shock in this moment. There's a bit of shock because as she's looking around, she has no idea where she's at. Somewhere in a farm, somewhere. Slowly, her brain is starting to process what has happened, and she realizes something really, really bad has happened. Maybe bad's not the right word, but something's wrong. Something does not feel right. Because now she's starting to go, wait a second, I got out of my car, I opened the hood, what am I doing here? Like, I have no memory of getting out here. Where am I? And at first, there's just kind of this dreamlike quality to it. Now her rational mind is kicking in. She has no idea how she got out here or where she's at. She stands up and she looks around. And she sees off in the distance headlights of cars driving. So she goes, well, okay. I mean, I don't know where I'm at now, but if I can get to a road, maybe I can figure this out. Really? She's not trying to be Sherlock Holmes just now. She wants to get back to her car, but she's still just kind of, not in a daze, but I guess the level of confusion you would have in this moment. Like, she's thinking clearly now, but things still don't make sense. The cars she saw in the distance, the headlights, that was a half a mile away. So she's walking through this recently harvested cornfield. Luckily, right, it would have been a lot scarier if it was not harvested. They are big corn stalks. Plus, she might not have been able to see the road if she's in the middle of a cornfield. But she begins walking out. She walks a half mile. She gets to this road and she sees... Oh, here we do have some road signs. So maybe you guys can figure this out. She sees road signs for 350 north and 50 west. And these crisscrossing, I believe those are highways. And she knows now where she's at. She's a half mile from where she stopped her car. So now she's walking through the darkness back to her car. Because she remembers where she turned off on that rural road. Having to walk for a total mile. She just wanted to go home and get some free food from her parents. She keeps walking. She says by the time she got to the road, it took her about 15 minutes to get to her car, which is pretty standard walking speed. You can walk, if you're walking 3 miles an hour, you can walk a mile in about an hour. Wait, what? Wait, hold on. Yeah. If she's walking, it's Jason does math segment. If you walk 3 miles an hour, which is the normal walking speed, just like a casual walk, and you only have to walk 1 mile, that would be 1/3 of an hour. You guys should see my face when I'm trying to do this math, which would be close to Nah, whatever. So anyways, the point is that she estimates that by the time she got to the road, it was about a 15-minute walk from the road to her car. She wasn't out that long, basically, is what she's getting at. I walked out of the cornfield, I found the road, and then I walked to my car. It didn't take that long for me to get to my car. 20 minutes tops. When she gets there, the first thing she notices is that her headlights are off. And remember, when she came out to check on the car, to check on the battery, the lights are and the radio was going up and down and all that stuff. She goes, her headlights are off. She sees her car, her headlights are off. That's weird. She gets in it and her battery's dead. She gets into her car and she's like, okay, well, I'll just call AAA or whatever. Call my parents and have them come pick me up. Whatever. She had her phone next to her in her seat. And a lot of people do that. I used to do that when I had a car. I would leave my phone in the passenger seat for whatever reason. Maybe so I could look at it and see who was calling me. It's been a long time since I've driven a car. But she has her phone in her passenger seat. She gets in the car's dead, the battery's dead. She looks over at her phone, she picks it up to call someone to get help, and it's 2:17 in the morning. Now, she was outside, 3 minutes outside of Bloomington when this all started. She was driving for a while, she got pulled over by the cop, right? We'll get to that in a second. And if you guys haven't already figured it out, but she gets pulled over and she gets teleported, at most, this whole thing should have taken maybe an hour and a half. By her waiting there for the cop for a while after she gets pulled over and then teleporting into the cornfield. But now, it's been 3 or 4 hours have passed when it should have been a much shorter amount of time for that. She said, I sat in the car for a while before I even made a phone call. She goes, I really just tried to figure out what could have possibly happened. But she can't, right? She's trying to retrace her steps. Did I black out? Like, what could have possibly happened? But eventually she's like, whatever, I can't figure it out. It's super late. I probably have some corn-related bacteria in me. She ends up calling AAA. They come and they help her out. And she's eventually able to get home and see her parents. What's interesting is she posted this, right? She didn't post it herself, but it was posted on phantomsandmonsters.com, a great website that has all these experiences. It was posted on phantomsandmonsters.com. She wrote it up and then submitted it to Lon Strickler, I believe, the guy who runs that website. If I remember correctly, in her entire narrative, she does not use the term aliens or UFOs at all. She doesn't know what happened. It has all the hallmarks of alien abduction. And some peculiar hallmarks as well. First off, obviously lost time. That's a big indicator of alien abduction. So that's one. The other one is, and this is an episode that we covered a long time ago. I haven't been able to find it again, but a lot of you guys have asked for it. We've covered before where there was a couple driving down the road and they saw emergency vehicles. I believe it was like an ambulance on the side of the road with the lights flashing. There might have been a police car there as well. And they slowed down to get by the accident like you do, right? If there's an accident in the road, you kind of got to swerve out of the way. And as they were driving through this area, if I remember the story correctly, it's been years since I covered it, but as they're driving by these emergency vehicles, they see these flashing lights. They slow down, and the next thing they know, these gray aliens are like opening their car doors. Him and his girlfriend's doors, and they both get yanked out of the car. And then they don't remember anything. And there was no accident there. There was no crash there or anything. It was an illusion. And would make sense because people slow down when they see these type of things. Most people, when you're driving on the road and you see police lights behind you, you'll slow down. Most people, right? You should. Can't say that I always have. But it would be a great gimmick. I mean, we know that gangs do it. Serial killers pretend to be police officers. Cartels and organized crime will pretend to be military or police officers to get you to stop your car. So why wouldn't aliens do it? But it's interesting because she never explicitly says UFOs are aliens. Again, if I remember correctly in her story, she doesn't know what happened. And also this kind of, I wanted to tell this story today because we kind of talked about it yesterday. I think it was yesterday's episode, where sometimes aliens will abduct you and then drop you off in the wrong location. Sometimes they'll pop you right out of your bed in the middle of the night. You don't even know it. You're sleeping. You can't tell you had lost time because you were asleep. You went to bed at 10 p.m. You woke up at 6 a.m. You don't realize you lost 3 hours of time because you were abducted. They put you right back in your bedroom. But we do have stories of people getting abducted and being dropped off miles, if not farther, right? Different states, different countries. Usually it's in the same general vicinity, but it's not always from where they take you. And I've wondered, is that because they're jerks? Or because their technology is spotty? Their technology doesn't always do what they need it to do. And we don't have an answer for that. But that's the same thing. She goes to check on her car battery, and the next thing you know, she's laying in the middle of this field, about a mile away from her car. So it's an interesting story. It does track with other UFO alien abduction stories we've covered before on this podcast, but I wanted to highlight especially the police lights, because we have seen that before. It's not super common. I think we covered another one where it was like a construction site. Because you'll slow down. I remember one of my favorite stories like this was the one with the gas station. I'll put that episode in the show notes, where the alien was trying to create a human gas station. And it was weird. It created this weird version of what you think the gas station would look like. But the alien couldn't disguise the fact that he was 9 feet tall or something weird like that. Like, first the alien was creating a sign saying pull over for gas. And the sign was wrong, so then I love doing this show, and I love finding these weird stories and sharing them with you. Because that's what I love, is digging for this weird stuff. I know some of it, you're like, Jason, some of this stuff may not be real. And, that's fair. I try to suss that out. I know that episode I did on Wednesday with the wallpaper, you're like, oh, that was a good Twilight Zone episode, Jason, but I don't know if that story was 100% authentic. I hope so. That's all. I'll find a fake story sometimes and expose it if I think it's like a scam or something like that. The story about the guy, the people trying to get gas, I don't think they were trying to get gas. I think they just became so curious at a certain point. They're like, oh, I think that's a UFO. I think there's an alien there. We don't need gas, but let's pull over and just find out. Just find out this giant gas attendant. Crazy stuff. I love stuff like this. And it's interesting too when somebody, and again, I might be wrong. I'll double check this before I put the episode out and might have to edit all this stuff out. But I do always think it's interesting when someone writes an account and they don't know what happened. Even though it has a lot of hallmarks of an alien or a UFO encounter, they don't use those terms. And that's one good thing that we have. Something that you and I have is that by listening to these stories, as fun as they are and doing this research, it allows us to be better prepared sometimes to read other stories or to talk to people about stuff, because we can kind of go, oh, that sounds like this, or that we could categorize it as this. Sometimes categorizing in the world of the paranormal is a fool's game because it can get so weird. Sometimes you think it's a ghost and it's really an alien. And also, I should say too, if you ever are driving down the middle of actually, no, this is a good advice. If you're ever driving in the middle of nowhere and a cop goes to pull you over, you should call 911 or call the police. This is actually a real tip. This is not a Jason's thinkins that I'm just making up on the spot. I've heard this before. If you're in the middle of nowhere, don't do this. If you're in downtown Chicago, I think you're fine. But if you're in the middle of nowhere, if you're in a remote area and you see police lights behind you, do not pull over. Don't pull over. Wait till I finish. You're like, oh, you shut off the podcast. You're like, that's all I had to hear. Let me finish. Don't pull over. You call the police and say, hey, listen, I'm driving through the mountains. I'm driving through the misty mountains where the ghostly hitchhiker is known to roam. And there's a cop behind me, and he's trying to get me to pull over. There's like 18 cops behind you. They're putting down spike strips. You're like, oh no, these guys might be burglars. These guys might actually be some phonies. There's a police helicopter flying overhead. You're like, let me call 911 first. That's why they say this. If you're in the middle of nowhere, because people do impersonate police officers, pull travelers over in the middle of nowhere and rob them or rape them or kill them or what have you. This has happened. They go, if you don't feel comfortable in the situation, if you're in the middle of nowhere, you can call the cops and you'll say, hey, listen, this car is trying to pull me over. I'm up in the middle of nowhere. Is there currently an officer trying to pull over a car on Rosebud Avenue? And the police will check into that. The police will go, oh yeah, sir, we've been trying to pull you over for 15 miles. You hear the bullhorn, pull over or we will open fire. You're like, ah. But sometimes, no, I'll see if I can find some in the show notes where this has actually worked. But the cops do say, they go, because it's nothing, right? If they're trying to pull you over in the middle of nowhere and you call 911 or you call the local police, like 911's the easiest one to dial, right? You can say, hey, someone's trying to pull me over in the middle of nowhere, and they will tell you whether or not they actually have an officer out there. And they'll say sometimes, yeah, we actually are trying to pull you over. That officer's talking to me. And to go ahead and pull over to the side of the road. You're like, okay, I was just, making sure. Right? You realized you dialed 912. That's the crooks line. That's how they coordinate everything. They're all, beat them up. But no, they may say, actually, no, we don't have an officer out there. Don't pull over. We'll send units out there and take care of it. So a little tip from Jason. The only part you heard was don't pull over. If the cops have your lights, you're like, done and done. You take off, barreling down the streets. Blitz Neo, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world famous Carpenter Copter. We are leaving behind Indiana. Why don't you fly us all the way out to Switzerland? Now, longtime listeners of Dead Rabbit Radio may be able to clear up a bit of a mystery. Rudy Jazz, longtime Patreon supporter, longtime active member on the Patreon Discord, always showing up for the live shows that we record on Sunday. Rudy is from Switzerland, and they believe, and I don't have any reason to disagree with them, because we kind of looked into this, that we have never covered a story from Switzerland on Dead Rabbit Radio. Like every story that I go, oh, what about that story? It took place in Finland. What about that story? It took place in Sweden. Which, to be fair, until I recently had to pull up a map of Europe, I thought Switzerland was a Nordic country. I thought it was up there with Finland and Sweden. What's the other big one up there? Norway? No, Switzerland's right in the middle of Europe. Now, you could say, Jason, that's just because of your education. I would argue it's the Mandela effect. I would argue I'm from a universe where Switzerland was farther up north. But anyways, whether or not Switzerland is where it's supposed to be, this might be the first time we've ever visited Switzerland on Dead Rabbit Radio. So, tip of the hat to Rudy. First time visiting their country. We're headed all the way out to Switzerland. We're about to meet a young couple. We're going to call the girl Jessie. She's 29. And she's there with her husband. We'll call him Mark. He's 32. And they're visiting Switzerland. They're on a Swiss vacation. They're also there with his parents. So I don't know, I've never been married. I've never had in-laws. I imagine some in-laws are cool, that you'd want to go on vacation with them. And some in-laws suck, probably, right? I think that's fair. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Well, luckily, Jessie seems to have a good relationship with her in-laws. They're going on this vacation together to Switzerland. They're going to stay in a chalet. A chalet. I imagine that's like a cabin, right? Isn't that like a fancy cabin up in the middle of nowhere? There's a couple of these chalets overlooking the Alps. This beautiful mountain range, all snowy and stuff. There's the squirrels are wearing fur coats because it's so cold up there, eating their nuts, gobbling up them Swiss acorns. It's beautiful. It's beautiful up there. And Jessie said it's so nice. You look at this view and you get the crisp, cool Switzerland air. We're staying in this chalet, but it's an old one, right? She's like, oh man. Talk about being picky. You're standing in a cabin overlooking Switzerland which I imagine is beautiful, right? I've never been there. I don't think I've ever seen a picture of Switzerland, but I'm sure it's pretty nice looking. Just looking around. I wonder if you could be in Switzerland, and because I know that it borders France and Germany. I know that now because I looked at a map the other day, but if you were in Switzerland and you were on a tall enough mountain, could you see France? And then you turn around and you see Germany. Like if from a single spot. Can you do that? I don't know. But maybe. Maybe with a telescope in a car. Drive around. Anyways, she's in this old chalet, but she says it's very charming, is the way she described it. Oh, and they're also there with their kids, too. So it's actually a full house. I forgot that Jesse and Mark, they have children of their own. It's a little crowded here at this chalet. But they're having a good time. Well, not everybody, I should say. On the first night, Jessie, she's looking around, she's like, oh, look at this beautiful, wood stuff on the floor. That's a wood floor. And she's like, wow, look at this banister. Wow, look at it. It's made of wood, and it goes up to the second story. And what's this? What's this? They're like, man, she's an idiot. She doesn't know what any of this stuff is. She's like, a solid piece of wood with a metal on it? Huh? And they're like, honey, that's a door. And she's like, what? Is that a Swiss word? She's amazed by all these little things. She goes, what's this? What's this? It's hard piece of ceramic. You're like, just tell the story. She's not that stupid. Now you're just going off on some dumb joke. What? Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? She's been on Earth before. She's been on land. She knows what this stuff is, but she's looking around and she finds it very beautiful. But the problem is on the first night, she keeps feeling like somebody's watching her. She gets the feeling that no matter where she's at, she's not alone. Well, technically she's not, right? Because the place is packed. She got the parents, his parents, and their kids. But it's more than that. She feels like someone's watching her and she can't really shake the feeling. On the second night, when she walked into her upstairs bedroom, she heard a knocking sound. She kind of stops. She's like, what? Huh? What? That's weird. And it still feels like someone's watching her. So that didn't go away. The next night, she's standing there in her bedroom, and she sees a shadow of a large person. I'm assuming broad-shouldered person. She sees a shadow walk by the window. But her bedroom is on the second story. So it's even creepier. And she still feels like someone's watching her, right? It's kind of compounding. She can't figure it out, and she's trying to think, well, that must have just been a trick of the light. Nobody could have walked by the second story window. But she's definitely feeling uneasy about being here. However, everyone else is having a ball. She's the only one who's noticing this stuff, or the only one who's telling anybody about it. That night, when she saw the figure walk by the window, when she went to go to sleep later, she said the room felt heavy. Something was wrong. She could pick up on all of these little clues. She realized something's wrong. The energy of this room is completely changed. But what are you going to do? You're in a beautiful chalet, in a little cabin. You're with your family. You're doing all this fun stuff. You can't really complain about stuff that could easily be explained away. Oh, honey, it's just heavy because, you had a long day of the ski lift. Oh, yeah, I guess. Honey, the giant shadow walking by, Switzerland's full of giants. It's the land of giants. But don't worry, they won't hurt you unless you steal their magic harp. And you're like, what? You can kind of explain this stuff away, trick of the light, being tired. So she doesn't make a big deal about it, but this night, as she's going to bed, she feels the room is heavy. There's something wrong. The energy is off. And she falls asleep. 4 a.m, she wakes up. She's laying there in bed, her husband fast asleep next to her. She's looking into the darkness of the room, and she sees, sitting on the edge of her bed, is a man. He's sitting there, and he's staring at her. She said his skin was gray. He had gray skin, it was nearly translucent. And this man had his hair styled in a way that she had never seen before. It's like, y'all, who's serious? It's all sticking up. He's all, ah! I mean, here's the thing. I imagine it very dapper. I don't imagine it all sticking up all crazy like Beetlejuice style. I imagine it's very stylistic, because I think you could say he had wild hair, or his hair was sticking up like he stuck his finger in a socket. She goes, his hair was styled in a way I'd never seen before. Never seen before on any person or even a picture, like a fashion picture. It struck her as very odd. She goes, his hair was styled in a way I'd never seen before. He was also wearing a suit. She noted with the suit that the collar and the lapels were in a style she had never seen before. Which is very interesting. I can understand someone having a hairstyle you've never seen before. Maybe like a sideways mohawk or some unique cut. But to have a collar of a jacket be so unusual, you can't even contextualize it. You can't even really describe it. You've never seen anything like it. That's a lot harder. She said the collar of the suit and the lapels of the suit, she'd never seen anything like it. They were styled in a particular way that was not familiar to her. This is not a fashion podcast. This is a paranormal podcast, but I want to highlight those because it's truly unique. This ghost has a passion for fashion, right? And here's the thing. I was telling this story to my friend Sabine, and she goes, well, is Jessie native to Switzerland? Like, maybe this is a fashion, maybe it's an old-timey fashion in the area. And we don't know. We know she's not. She's American. She's actually not native to Switzerland, but we don't know if this is a particular fashion in Switzerland. If this ghost was one of a kind. Whatever it was, though, we're kind of really going into the fashion thing. She's looking at him. She notes that the hair, the collar of the jacket, and the lapels, she'd never seen anything like it before. But she's not really worried about that. What she's worried about is as this ghost is staring at Jessie, she can feel the hate emanate from him. She could feel the raw, unbridled disgust and hatred and rage wash over her. This ghost, this phantom, this entity, whatever you want to call it, despised Jessie. And Jessie feels this hate. She sees this man sitting at the foot of her bed, staring at her, and she can feel how much he despises her. And her only real defense is what we do as kids, too. She closed her eyes. She closed her eyes for a few seconds, and then she opened them. Now, sitting on the edge of the bed is the man. But he's covered himself in a white bedsheet. And he's slowly turning his head. Slowly turning his head to look back at her. Now, this phantom is draped in a white bedsheet, staring off somewhere into the room. Covered head to toe in this white bedsheet, it slowly starts to turn its head. Slowly starts to turn its head to look back towards Jessie. She screams. She screams out loud, and her husband instantly wakes up. This figure vanishes in an instant. And she basically woke up everyone in the house. She was screaming that loud. She's very open. She tells them, I don't feel comfortable in this room. I don't feel comfortable being here. I'm going to spend the night outside, right? I'm going to grab the blankets that I need. I'll be out on the patio. And she does. It's very interesting because how many ghost stories do we read? And this is fair. People do this in haunting situations where they will immediately go to sleep after a terrifying event. It's almost something that the body just does by default. But she's like, nope, something's terribly wrong here. This thing is trying to scare me. She feels that in her head. She doesn't really explain everything to her family at this moment, but she goes, when it reappeared wearing the bedsheet, that was it trying. There's something so terrifying about that. It's funny because you think of like Casper, you think of like these funny ghost Halloween costumes. For the ghost to appear as a full body apparition, fully detailed, where you can tell details in its clothing and its hair, to then cover itself in a white sheet, as childish as that sounds, it's also, to me, such a terrifying image. There honestly is a difference, and we've covered stories like this before, where ghosts have appeared wearing the white sheet standing at the end of the hallway. If you heard that story when you were a little kid, you'd be like, that's stupid. That's like from cartoon movie ghosts. But you imagine if you're walking through your house late at night and you look down the hallway and you see a woman standing at the end of the hallway. That's terrifying enough. It's a ghost woman, right? It's not like your mom or your girlfriend or something like that. She's not supposed to be there. It's a ghost woman. That's terrifying enough. But now put her on a white sheet. Put a white sheet over her. Which I guess that's kind of more terrifying. I think it is. I think it's perverting a childhood ghost thing, right? It's corrupting something that's innocent. This friendly ghost, the sheet with the eye holes in it. And it's also the obscuring of the real. The ghost actually appeared as a full body apparition, which is really one of the hardest things for a spirit to do. But then it hid itself again. And there's just something very terrifying about it. The same reason why I think that a haunted doll is more terrifying. In general, I think people would agree with this. A haunted doll is intrinsically more creepy than a haunted watch. Because the doll is something from childhood. And it reminds us of childhood fears. A haunted Teddy Ruxpin is scarier than a haunted backpack. So she says, I'm going to go stay outside. And then the next morning, she talked to her father-in-law. You know, he's there on this trip. He's actually a minister. And she asked him, because they still got to stay here, right? They're not moving out this day. They're on a vacation. She asked him to kind of bless the place, to kind of pray over it. And he did. Again, I'll have to double check. I don't remember her going into a lot of details with the family, being like, and then he was wearing a sheet. And they're like, what? What are you, 7? I think she just kind of gave him a general overview at the time. But Jesse said after my father-in-law was praying and kind of, you know, trying to put up a spiritual protective barrier over the place, she goes, for my remaining time there, I still felt like something was watching me, but I no longer felt threatened. I felt like something was watching me, but I didn't feel like I was being stalked. There's a difference between the two. She could tell the entity was still there, but it couldn't do anything to her. She said later on she actually did some research on the area and on the chalets, because this wasn't the only one up there. There was ones nearby. She said she was doing stuff on Google looking this up. Apparently the other 2 chalets on each side of this one were reported as haunted. People said they had experienced things and there was a force that would hold them down while they were sleeping from time to time. Other people would say they'd hear the sounds of somebody walking back and forth late at night when nobody was up. So the area in general seemed to be haunted. Nothing else matched her story, and especially, she couldn't even really find any hauntings of that chalet, recorded hauntings of that chalet itself, but she found them for the other 2, which I thought was interesting. It's possible that the people who were experiencing the hauntings in the chalet they were in either didn't detect it, right, because no one else in the family was experiencing this stuff, or it was just too creepy, too bizarre. They weren't going to put it on Google reviews. This is a great view, but a man in a white bedsheet's going to show up there. Like, what? What does that even mean? Were you there on Halloween? I love stories like this. I feel like this is the season. Season 6 is where I'm really kind of finding these bizarre stories that I get a real kick out of. This is posted online, actually. Let me give the shout out by VKH9210. I love stories like this because of the abstract nature of it. Because it does have that creepy level to it. If the ghost had just popped up at the edge of the bed, I'll be completely honest, and had interesting hair and interesting lapels, I personally would have enjoyed it as reading a ghost story and never would have talked about it on the show. Because I don't know what other element is in there, either from the point of me presenting it, or does it show something else that's going on in the world of the paranormal. Case in point, a while back I did an episode about a guy who was in South Africa, I believe is where the story took place. He was in South Africa, he went to stay at a hotel, and he was from Europe. He went to South Africa to stay at a hotel, and when he was there, he saw the apparition of a Boer soldier being gutted or being killed. He saw basically two ghosts, and he saw a reenactment of this foreign soldier, this soldier who was part of the Boer Wars when they were in the middle of South Africa, taking over or holding on to power, whatever it was at the time. He sees this guy getting stabbed, this apparition of this dude getting gutted by another combatant, and it freaked him out. And the next morning when he went to go check out, and he also goes, you might need to clean the sheets in there. It's pretty messy. And he mentioned it. The hotel keeper said only people of, if I remember correctly, I'll put the episode in the show notes, but basically the story was it was only people of European descent, and maybe even specifically the same ethnicity of the Boer, could see that ghost. And she was kind of giggling about it because she knew that he was from that country or from that lineage. Who wore the Boers? If I get a detail wrong, it was just Mandela effect. It was a different episode I recorded. But the point is that it's the same story. A guy wakes up in the middle of the night, sees a ghost, but you have that twist on it. Only people of a certain ethnicity saw that scene. I mean, that's fantastic stuff. When you look at the world of the paranormal, that type of stuff is insane. And it's the same thing with this one. The ghost willingly, it can manifest itself as a living, well, not living, but it appears as a full-body human. And then when she closes her eyes like a child, trying to make the danger go away, and she opens them, he's now wearing a white sheet, the image of a childhood ghost. But it's the obfuscation of the ghost. It's hiding that and turning it into this weird, creepy on a different level type of spirit. It'd be the difference between someone breaking into your house, wearing a ski mask. There is a different level of terror involved in the two, I believe. I've never had that happen. That might be pushing it too far. You're listening to this podcast as a home invasion is going on. You're like, help me. Take your masks off. This is too spooky. Crazy story. And you wonder what she saw. This ghost hated her. It's so weird, too, that she was the only one who experienced it. She was to the point that she did have to come clean and say, hey, father-in-law, like, I'm going to need some spiritual blessings on this, which, sometimes can be embarrassing. But out of everyone at this place, and there was a lot of them, right? They had their kids, the couple, and the father and mother-in-law. It's like, it was her. She's the one who saw it. It wasn't just that. It wasn't that she was just seeing the fleeting image of a ghost. It hated her. She could feel how much it hated her. So if you're looking for a good vacation, maybe head out to Switzerland. You might be able to find the chalet on discount. You might be able to go up there and be like, wow, no one's living here. Well, that's it, everyone. We are out of time for this episode. Not that the episodes run too long, but because it's simply gotten too hot to record anymore. So we're going to have to wrap it up this next week or two. I'm just going to have to do episodes, record them like 3, 4 in the morning. I actually just got out of the shower. Because, see, I got to shut all my fans off and everything to record this. That's why it gets so hot in here. When I'm not recording, it's a nice 66. But I just got out of the shower. I will end the episode with this. As I'm slowly starting to melt, my eyeballs are falling out of their sockets. I want to tell you about a little conspiracy theory that I have. This is how we'll wrap up this episode, but I'm going to keep it quick. I don't dry myself off when I get out of the shower. I think it's a scam. And here's why. So, people get so irritated when I'm over at their house. There's like puddles of water going from the bathroom into the kitchen. Big puddle at the fridge, and then out of the kitchen. I'm walking across their carpet. They're like, why didn't you dry off? Well, here's my thing. I take a towel, and I get out of the shower, right? And I take a towel, and I rub it around my head a bit. And then I rub it on, like, I get bored, basically, if I gotta be honest. It's so boring to dry yourself. I dry my hair, and I'm, like, running the towel over my head, and my head's still wet. My head's still wet. So then I sit there, and I'm trying to, like, dry off my shoulders and my back, and I'm like, oh, this is dumb. So then I just walk out. I have a bathrobe at home, so that also absorbs it. But that's my point. You don't have to dry yourself off in the bathroom because the miraculous thing about water is it goes away anyways. So whether or not I'm standing in the bathroom drying myself off or I'm just walking around the house, sit down, my chair is all covered in mold. There's a big giant mushroom. I'm sitting on it like Alice in Wonderland. What's the point? The water goes away anyways. Why do I have to take a towel and rub it all over me and be bored, right? It's super boring. And you take a hot shower, and then you shut the water off. Your bathroom is hot. So now while you're trying to dry yourself off, you're sweaty. Because the bathroom is so hot from the steamy air and steamy water. So then you walk out of your bathroom, and you go, okay, it's nice here. It's 66 degrees. And then you get bored. And you're like, whatever, dude. You don't need to dry yourself is what I'm saying. I think it's a scam set up by the towel industry. The water will go away one way or the other. Whether or not you're sitting there and you're rubbing this piece of cloth on you. I hate drying so much that for a while there, I saw an ad for something. And I go, dude, I wonder if I can use that. It looks like it would be so much quicker to dry myself with it. So I bought a ShamWow. You remember ShamWows? You remember that yellow cloth that supposedly was able to just absorb water in an instant? They showed that dude spilling something, and he's like, ShamWow! You put the little orange thing on it, and it sucked up the blue juice. They don't work well as a towel. They're not, to be fair, they're not marketed as a towel. They show the guy cleaning his car with them. I still have mine. I bought it back when those commercials were on. What was that, 10, 15 years ago? But they don't work well drying. So I've tried to find other ways to dry myself off, but at the end of the day, it's just boring, and I don't think you have to. I think you're able to just kind of walk around. Have you ever seen an animal dry themselves? No. Dogs, okay, maybe, because they do that little shaky thing. But a beaver is just like swimming around in a lake, and then he gets up on the ground, he just walks around. He doesn't have a towel. You don't need a towel. When were towels even invented? I should probably Google that. As the heat stroke is hitting my brain, you're like, Jason, you clearly don't believe this. This is just a heat-induced conspiracy theory. Well, if you ever have me over at your house, all of the puddles and the soaked furniture will let you know that this is a real Jason conspiracy theory. It is just a gimmick to get you to buy towels. Stop lying to yourself. Stop drying yourself. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be your email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm so glad you listened to it today. Have a great weekend. Stay cool and stay safe.